want to just share a little bit more with you about the way that this scripture has been on my mind. The topic of working in God's creativity to solve problems has been fresh on my mind this week. I've been particularly looking at our leadership team here. This has been the hardest part of the pandemic for me. Part of my job is to recruit and nominate members to the team to make sure that the church can continue to function. I've found that particularly difficult in COVID because I don't know people very well. However, it's time for this to be a priority. You may know that Libby Wright is moving this month. She is the chairperson. Additionally, Nancy Cox is rolling off this summer. Nancy and Libby both extended their terms by an extra 6 months in order to be helpful. Soon, Debbie Ambrose will be rolling on, so the team will be Debbie, Halsey Smith, and Mary Kay Abramson. Ideally, however, we're supposed to have 7 members. So many people that I've talked to have told me stories of burnout from being on leadership at this church. And that's not unique to this church. I've heard that at probably every church I've even visited. You hear stories of burnout from being on leadership. They've told me stories of staying in the same position for year after year after year beyond their stated commitment. And I'm not going to ask someone to do something for the church that is draining to their souls. I can't do that, and I'm not going to. But did you know that many churches have a very Saul mentality with leadership? We ask people to serve in the way that their predecessor did, or the way the church down the street does it, or the way they did it 50 years ago when church was the only thing that you had to do, perhaps. Churches today don't function the same way they did when my grandfather was a pastor. We need a new script. We need to think like David. We need to listen for God. Recently, I found a document that Reverend Sue had saved for me on leadership teams, and it is beautiful. It describes the leadership team as a group that visions for the future of the church. It alludes to other groups around the building, around the church, doing things like caring for the building and planning worship. And I think this is a David at his best system. And it's also God jobs. Leadership is a God job. Sound is a God job. Cleaning the memorial stones is a God job. Printing the bulletins is a God job. Changing the filters is a God job. Anything we do for God's glory is a God job. It's as simple as that. So if you're thinking that you don't have the skills for the leadership team, I bet that that's not true. This team does have a few requirements. We meet monthly. It's the only job where you actually have to be a member of the church, and we ask for a 3-year commitment. And I'm feeling very strongly about this 3-year commitment. I don't want to continue to have a Saul mindset where we have to wait for the perfect person to step into the position while the current person works themselves to the bone. I don't really care about the expected skill set. If you're passionate and if you are willing to learn, we will figure it out by God's grace. If you're listening and thinking, well, I'm not a member, so I'll tune out, or I've done leadership, she's not going to get me like that, don't worry, there is still a God job for you. Some of the things that are coming off the top of my head from this morning, if you have ever rented a house or a property, or ever been the person at your house who calls the plumber when something goes wrong, we'd love your help with the parsonage and the buildings. This week, the air conditioning in the upper half of the parsonage went out, and it was great to have someone make the phone call to figure out who could come. You don't have to fix the air conditioning, you just have to call, right? If you've ever organized a group of people to do something, maybe a volunteer group or a sports group or even a household of kids with chores and schedules, then we'd love your help organizing the needed God jobs around the property. If you've ever watched the news or driven through DC and wished that you could do something to make the world a better place, then we'd love your help with missions. And here's what's so beautiful. If we have a solid system of people doing God jobs, things that are big commitments or small commitments, things that can be just when the air conditioning goes out, or every 6-month filter changes, or just something comes up and it needs to be done, If we have that, then the leadership team, the ones with the longer commitments who are meeting with me every month, then they're freed up to do the work of visioning for Salem's future. I'm really passionate about this. I want you to take some time to think about what you could offer. Think about your energy level, what would be realistic for you. Think about your experiences, whether they're conventional or not. We're going to be sending out an interest survey either this night when the worship comes out, or next week when the worship comes out. Please do fill it out. Even if you're not interested, there will be a section where you say, sounds cool, but I don't want to do that, because that will help me know what needs to happen next. Our most pressing need is the leadership team. But it's time to be creative. It's time to think like David. We don't need a church that Saul would put together. We need a church like God is calling us to be here. Not one where we're exhausted and doing stuff that just brings everyone down and we forget why we're even doing it. We need a church where we're working together and we can look towards God's future for us with purpose. So I really invite you to be praying and thinking about that, and reach out to me if any of this sounds interesting to you outside of the survey itself.